Welcome to the winter solstice edition of the Tucson Macintosh User Group meeting. Our next meeting is on Tuesday, January 16th at this same virtual location. In January, we will have an Ask Me Anything session, once again hosted by Kevin. This month, the Ask Me Anything session was pretty quiet. I think pretty much everybody has all their problems solved, or they were out shopping at the last minute at Walmart and Costco. We anticipate having an accessibility minute with Chris Wesselman in January. Unfortunately, he's not here with us as yet. He sent me a text from the ER this afternoon saying that he's having some vision problems and that he was not going to make it today. So that's where he is, but he's working on a accessibility minute regarding Apple Watch. So tune in next month for that. Tonight, we welcome Dr. Marty Mencius, who is with us now. He's a professor, and so he's used to getting into the classroom on time, I presume. And so he's going to be with us for a little bit before we introduce him after a couple of our regular segments. And he's going to talk about AI and how it can be used to your advantage. In January, we will listen to Learn New Technology with Sticks, presented by Jill McKinney, also known as Jill from the North Woods. She's formerly a Youper. Some of us here will know what a Youper is. And now she lives in Madison, Wisconsin. Announcements. Our TMUG elections are next month. And this is the call for candidates. All of the current officers have agreed to run for their same offices, and that's because I haven't asked them yet. But that doesn't mean we couldn't use your help and opinions at the board of directors meeting. Every time we get a new officer or significant volunteer at our regular board of directors meetings, it helps us. So please consider running for election next month. If you'd like to learn more, you can contact any of the current officers and we will let you know what's going on. Also, it has been not our business, but it's been our pleasure to donate to the Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona. In the past years, we tried to do this so we could get the donations to them like between Thanksgiving and Christmas. This year, we forgot about it until this month at the board meeting. Kurt remembered it and talked to us about it. So we are encouraging people to donate to the Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona. And you could go through your pantry and pick out some old canned goods and take it down there, and that'll help. You can go to their website and donate directly from the website, and that'll help. But if you write out a check to Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona and send that check to the TMUG P.O. Box, the TMUG Treasury will match it and send it off to the Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona. And you'll still be able, because you've made out the check that way, you'll still be able to deduct the donation from your taxes. Please see the chat for a link to our online presenter review poll. And Bob Dom just put it in there, and he'll put it in there at least one more time toward the end of the meeting. And we will, if you click on that link and you go to that web page, don't do anything else now. Just do that now. And then after the meeting, fill out the poll and submit it, and that'll help the board of directors plan our future meetings. We also have a bunch of user group swag that came from the South Jersey Apple user group, which I believe is no longer in business. We have a lot of posters and some clothing, and sometime tonight I'll get to the shared Apple Photos library and put that link into the chat, and you can go there and see the stuff. And if you want some of that stuff, drop me a note, and then I'll set it aside and you can come and get it. If you need me to send it, I'll send it, but I will expect you to pay for the shipping. Our virtual door prize during last month's meeting was won by Bob Eldred. Congratulations, Bob. He's here with us now. Thank you, Bob, for your support. And I'm pretty sure I sent you the gift card.
You did. Thank you.
Thank you. The names of tonight's attendings will be collated into a numbered list, and we'll ask Siri to pick a winner. Please don't let me close the meeting without picking the door prize winner. And you also you'll be entered, if you are a TMUG member, into the annual super raffle. And Kurt will be taking attendance. And if your name is in there, he'll fill out the ticket. And then in March, we will pick a winner. Are there any other announcements? I think I forgot something. How about that? Maybe I didn't. Either that or you forgot it too. Okay.
So
That was my next thing. Thank you. Thank you, Rich. Are there any for sales or wanted to buy items? Nothing from Kevin?
No.
Nothing from Kevin. Okay, you must be
Christmas is
sucking it
fun.
down chimneys for the good little boys and girls of your neighborhood.
I have donated so much equipment lately. I don't have anything left.
Cleaning house is very cathartic, isn't it?
Well, I know people that can't afford new computers, so I've been configuring old ones and getting working for their kids.
Okay. Well, now we're going to move on to the next section, which is the tech update and security update from Ridge. Ridge, are you ready to take over?
okay, here we go. Well, let's start sharing the screen. And let's see. Are we seeing it?
Yep.
Okay, for December, let's see what we got. We've got the software updates from last time. 1Password is now up to 8.10.20. And Illustrator got updates for After Effects. Adobe did Illustrator, After Effects, InDesign, and Prelude updates. And if you're using the Affinity programs in place of Adobe's Creative Suite, that's up to version 2.3 now. And Chrome for iOS is up to 120.101. And whenever you see the word through, that means there were several other additional updates between up to the final one. Chrome is up to now 120.71. And if you're using default folder, it's up to 603 now. And Firefox for the Mac is up to 120.01. And Firefox for the iPad, iOS is up to 121. Graphic Converter is now up to 1208, and Keyboard Maestro, if you're using that, that's up to 1102. And Office for Mac is now up to 16.80. and Parallels Desktop, if you're using that to run Windows, it's up to 19.2. And you can see the rest of them there. They're alphabetical. The most important ones for most of us would probably be Spam Sieve up to 301 and Super Duper up to 308. And we're running Zoom 516.10 now. And Apple had its series of updates. If you're wearing the iPod Pro 2, they got a firmware update. And Monterey was up to 12.7.2, and Ventura is up to 13.6.3, and Sonoma is up to 14.2.1. And if you're using HomePods, the software is now up to 17.2. And Apple's professional programs, Compressor, Final Cut Pro for the iPad and Mac, and they all got updated. And Logic Pro and Logic Pro for the iPad and Mac, they are updated. GarageBand even got its update too. You can see those on that slide. And of course, there were more updates from Apple as well. It's up to main stage up to 366, and Motion and Pro Video is updated. And if you're running Ventura and Monterey, Safari is now up to 17.2. And if you use iMovie, it's up to 10.4 now. And the iPad OS version 16 is up to 7.4, and version 17 is up to 17.2.1. The watch also got updates up to 10.2, and so did the TV OS. And Xcode is finally now up to 15.1. Coming, not yet released yet, or it might be in a release candidate, which is not available to all of us. Sonoma's coming 14.3, and the iPad OS is coming 17.3, and the TV OS is going to be 17.3, and Watch OS will be 10.3, and Vision OS is going to come sometime when those goggles get released. And Xcode is coming, is going to be 15.2. Now, here's something we're going to talk about the iPhone and water. And here we have a diver cleaning the San Jose River in Northern California found an iPhone 12 that had been submerged for 3 months, and it was covered in algae. So he cleaned it up and set it aside to dry out for a couple of days, and then 6 days later, he managed to power it on after connecting a charger. Now, here's that information about Apple stopping sales of the Series 9 and Ultra 2 smartwatches. Today, they said they would pause their sales starting on this coming Thursday in the US, because it's good dealing with a patent dispute over the technology that enables a blood oxygen feature on those watches. And this is in response to an ITC decision announced back in October, which upheld a ruling from last February regarding Apple's infringement on a patent for the Apple Watch blood oxygen sensor. But meanwhile, Apple's working on a software workaround to try to fix that issue. And here's more about Apple and repair. They've announced that their diagnostic troubleshooting tool suites are now available for all iPhones and Macs as part of the self-service repair program. And they say that the tool is intended for users with the knowledge and expertise to repair Apple devices. That's going to be like Kevin and me. And will give customers the same ability as Apple authorized service providers and the independent repair providers to test the devices for optimal part functionality and performance, as well as identify what parts are needed to repair. You're going to be running iOS 17 and macOS Sonoma 14.1, and later they're required. And you need to put the iPhone or the Mac into diagnostic mode and then enter the serial number to check which diagnostic suites are available. And they also said that all iPhone 15 models and M2 Macs are now able to be self-repaired. Here's a kind of a neat patent application for Apple has gone through, and which shows that Apple wants a better flashlight on its watches, and it's going to be part of the strap link right next to the watch body, and it'll have its own battery and lamp. Now, the 40th anniversary of the Mac comes in January, and the Computer History Museum has prepared some pictures to show everybody on that anniversary. And there's the original Mac from 1984. And here's a wire-wrapped Mac prototype main board that was available in 1983 that they've got. And you can see all the holes on that board that you could just plug the components into, and then on the back of it, wire it, hand wire it. And here's the main logic board from 1984. I knew this board very well because I used to do that for a living, taking them out and putting them into the Macs in 1988 to 1992. And here's an ad page that Apple ran for the Mac in 1984, showing all the components. And they also have a breakdown of what the original Mac mouse prototype looked like and the parts of it. And as far as nostalgia goes, there was a check to Radio Shack for $4.01 that was signed by Steve Jobs back in July of 1976, and it went up for auction and brought over $46,000. Whoopee. As far as rumors go, there's one online that says an iPad Air with a 13-inch screen and may be very close to release. And another online rumor says that Apple is planning on a over 14-inch iPad Pro with a 3,000 nit screen, maybe for next year. And Apple is now rumored to launch 2 new 4th generation AirPod models next year. And next year, Apple is rumored to add sleep apnea and blood pressure sensing to its watches. And now we still have, if you would like, iron-on or sew-on patches or pins. And if you want one of them, contact me or Kurt Blanchard. Be happy to figure out some way to get it to you. Thanks for your attention to this part of my presentation. And now we'll switch over to the things that are of security interest for this month. And as far as software with critical security fixed, once again, we have Adobe having security fixes in Illustrator, After Effects, InDesign, and Prelude. Google's updated Chrome for the Mac up to 120 version 120.109, and there's 20 total fixes, security fixes in that software. And Mozilla updated Firefox for the Mac up to 120.0 with 10 total fixes. And Microsoft had 5 fixes when they went up to 16 in Office for Mac when they went up to 16.8. Apple has had some fixes and security fixes in their software updates too. Monterey got 18 fixes in its update, and there were 17 fixes in Ventura. And Sonoma had 39 fixes in their stretch from 14.1.2 to 14.2. And the Safari for Ventura and Monterey had 2 security fixes up to 17.2. tvOS had 8 fixes, and the iOS iPad updates had 8 fixes, and the 16 version and the 17 version got up 27 fixes, and the watch, even up to 10.2, had 9 fixes. Now, as far as cybercrime goes, North Korea is really into malware. The researchers from Sentinel-1 have found that several groups that are working to conduct operations at the behest of Kim Jong-un's regime in Northern Korea. And they're now mixing and matching components of various types of Mac-targeted malware so they can evade detection and maybe fly under the radar. as they continue to trying to raise money for Kim's government. And they discovered that recent components of the malware named Lazarus, Blue North, Candy Corn, and Rust Bucket are being used to target Mac operating machines that are in the areas of cryptocurrency exchanges and other financial institutions. So the bad guys are taking evasive steps by mixing components of those malwares, hoping to throw security researchers and victims off their trail. And now here's what Macworld has to say at the end of the year, how to stay safe. They remark that the Mac operating system is a very secure system with no need for you to panic, but to reduce the chances of being compromised, Macworld's guys say do the following: only download software from the Mac App Store or the official website of the developer, and avoid clicking on links in emails that might lead to spoofed websites and malware. And they don't advise you use USB and other cables and memory sticks that you aren't absolutely sure are safe. And they advise you to browse the web in private or incognito mode. And if you don't respond, they advise you not to respond to a ransomware request or a phishing email, because all that does is confirm to the bad guys you exist. Also, they recommend you download Apple's Mac OS updates as soon as they become available, because they usually contain security fixes. And finally, they urge you to turn on automatic updates in your system settings. And then they ask you to consider using a dedicated security software package like Intego Internet Security X9. And they also ask you to consider using a password manager like LastPass or 1Password. That enables you to have multiple complicated login details across all of your online accounts without having to remember them all. And once again, they recommend the best antivirus apps for your Mac. And they say that the best paid version they can recommend is the Intego Mac Mac Internet Security X9, which is about $50 a year. And there is a free version of an antivirus product that they recommend called the Avast Free Antivirus for the Mac. And that's it for me. So the moral of the story is to stay safe. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Rich. A informative presentation as always.
Kevin, do you have something to add as far as?
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of complaints from clients that think that they've got a virus. One of the things that Apple added in Monterey was the ability for websites to send you an alert. So what a lot of these sneaky sites are doing is when you go to a site that you know of, like say a news site, that'll toggle a thing in your browser to allow them to send you an alert. The alerts look like they're coming from Apple, and it could be things to download a new version of Safari, which is infected, or I've seen them for McAfee and other antivirus apps. Or one client even had one that said, "Call Apple Computer. Your computer is infected." And they called them and it ended up not being Apple because they had a nice Indian accent. So it's not difficult to disable the feature. I'm going to put it in the chat window. I would recommend that everybody does this.
But not right now.
But not right now. Do it tonight or tomorrow. But definitely you don't want erroneous websites to be able to send you an alert, and especially one that looks like it's coming from Apple, because it looks like it's part of the OS.
Okay. I'm going to copy that right now and put it in this note. Thank you, Kevin, for bringing us that to our attention with late breaking news on the security front.
One
I
more
would like
thing.
to, yeah,
Were you going to mention the thing with Comcast?
not me. You go ahead.
For the last month, if you actually log into Xfinity.com, you would have gotten an alert saying you have to reset your password. Nobody knew why, but yesterday it came out that Comcast was hacked. And anybody with an Xfinity account needs to log into Xfinity.com and reset your password. And if you don't do it, your email may stop working on you.
Okay. Very good. And again, thank you, Kevin, for the late breaking news on the security front. And I would like to welcome Bill Edmonds, who is someone who has joined us and is someone I don't think we've seen before. Welcome, Bill, and say hello. And can you tell us how you found out about TMUG?
Sure, Bob. I got your newsletter. I'm a member down here in Green Valley of the GVR Computer Club. And
Oh,
about a
okay.
year ago, I'd gotten some information and received your current newsletter and decided to join you today, if that's okay.
You're entirely welcome. You do not need to know the secret handshake to attend. But if you find that there's something here useful for you, maybe you would consider joining TMUG. Our annual dues are an incredibly expensive $30 a year. Now I would like to welcome our special guest, Marty. I think your last name is pronounced Jenkins. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's Mencius. But
Jenkins. Okay.
people just call me Jay.
Oh, okay. I have a doctor who's called Dr. G because nobody can pronounce it, even the people in his clinic.
And I worked in radio for a number of years, and the first stations I worked at, everybody was able to pronounce my name correctly. The last station I worked at, the first day I was on the air, I used my full name. And at the end of the day, the program director came up and said, "We're changing your name because no one else can pronounce it." So my name has lost all context to me.
Okay. Well, Marty, I'd like you to launch into your Apple of my AI talk, but first, if you'd give us a short little bio of who you are, where you are, and what you do, that would be helpful too.
Yeah, I am I'm in Kent, Ohio, and I teach at Kent State University and have been here for 23 years and worked in Georgia for 3 years before that, worked in mental health in the South and in the Midwest for 15 years before that. But currently at Kent State, my area is counseling. We have a master's and a doctoral program in it. So I've been involved in that activity, but my area of interest and specialty is technology application to the practice of counseling and the teaching of counseling. So that's where my sort of tech interest started and why I've been interested in technology altogether. It's part of the hobby that I do. Um, Big in our field right now, new in our field, and very scary in our field is the idea of AI. And so my presentation will focus around that, some around what it means from an academic standpoint, but mostly ways in which I'm one of those people who leans into AI. And because of that, I'm going to give you some, I think, quick ideas that you can use to effectively use, in particular, Chat GPT. I also have all of this on a web link for you, so you can, get those resources when you want them, and I set that up. So don't worry about trying to get everything too much all at once, because you can always refer back to the web link to get the information that you need. So that's me in a nutshell. I like chasing the next interesting thing. I have been a member of the Northeast Ohio Apple Corps, or RMUG, up here in Northeast Ohio, and have been there for about 6, 7, 8, it's maybe longer than that, 8 years or so. And they have changed from a pre-COVID experience to a post-COVID experience. And it's moved away from the instructional part and the technology part and the Mac part into more of a social support group. And occasionally people will ask Mac questions. So my interest in TMUG is because you guys are still talking about technology. And that's what I get from these kinds of groups. So I am really honored to be presenting tonight, and have a lot of interests along these lines. So if you like what I do tonight, feel free to ask me to come back on whatever topic you want. Should I launch in?
Go for it.
Go
Okay.
right ahead. Go right
I
ahead,
am going to
Marty.
share my screen, and I am going to open up my presentation. And I don't want to pretend I know everything. Don't tell my students that, because I like to keep that fantasy up that I do know everything. So, one of the things you learn about teaching is that a third of the time people ask questions because they really don't know. And a third of the time people ask questions because they want to show you how much they do know, but they put it in the form of a question. And another third of the time, I don't know why they ask questions. But I welcome questions if you have them. I would say, just because I have this at full screen, the easiest thing to do would be to just jump in, and I'll occasionally stop and ask if there are questions at the point, through this. What you see is a little bit of contact information for me if you want to contact me. The website there is my website, and that page is not visible. It's not part of the navigation system. So if you want to get to the page that has a lot of links, and I just put a lot of AI related material in there, along at the top of it, this presentation and some other documents. You can go to that page and take a look at it. And I'll have this come up again near the end of the presentation. I did this presentation, or I started this presentation this summer at MacStock, and that's where Bob and I met. And I changed it a little bit, but one of the things that came out of MacStock was I've been doing podcasts for a while and decided to reignite a podcast with a colleague of mine called the Tech Savvy Professor. It's been finals week, so we haven't been able to get them out on a weekly basis. But I just uploaded one tonight that I think Apple is still, Apple, it takes a while for them to add podcasts in. But it's already on Spotify. I know that. So you might look for more information on the Tech Savvy Professor. I subtitled this, or how I learned to stop worrying and love my new dark overlord, because people's approach to AI is it's going to be this science fiction thing that's going to take over the world. It's going to be bad for you, and everybody's going to become stupid because of it. And I feel the other way about it. I think it's just a natural transgression, change in our process. Like, we've always seen new technologies come along, and every time a new technology came along, it was going to be the death of us. And we've adopted, and actually we've incorporated the new technology. So I think this is just a transition phase for us. At a glance, this is my presentation. Gave you a little bit of my background and interest in AI. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of chatbots, because they're not new. They just didn't show up a couple of years ago, although my students think they did. And then talk about its implication and issues in academics, sort of a little personal implication that it had in terms of medicine. Then I'm going to move into the Mac use and give you some examples of how to manage prompts, how to proliferate your prompt, make your prompt bigger and better, and then how to use it as part of a productivity process. There's a slide on cheat sheets that if you forget anything or you want to know how to do stuff, you can go to that slide or go to some of those links in that slide. It'll give you cheat sheets on how to do and use AI prompts. A slide that I call clickbait, which is the kinds of things that we see in the media that gets everybody excited, but really doesn't pan out. It's ways that get us to click on there and then see the advertisement that goes with it. And then some fun stuff. End it off with fun stuff. So my interest in AI really starts with my technology interest and background. I've been working with tech and counseling since 1994. I started a listserv, which now has about 6,000 members called SESNet. And the members are primarily faculty, educators in our field, doctoral students, and some practicing counselors. Been working on websites from the good old days where you'd rip off somebody's source code and then paste it into yours and change the names and titles and everything like that and create your own website. I've never been a coder, I have to tell you that. I'm intimidated by coders and groups that have coders in them because I feel a little bit like a fraud. But a lot of the stuff that is tech related is very heavy from people who've been doing coding and even been doing the kinds of things that were talked about with motherboards and things like that for years. I started an online journal, which was the first in our field, called the Journal of Technology and Counseling. It's now not operative anymore, but it was one of the things I did in '98. Started working with virtual worlds in Second Life and created environments where we could go in and do teaching and learning instead of all getting in an airplane, flying off to some distant city, going to a hotel, going to the conference rooms in the hotel and watching people talk to us about their PowerPoint slides. And really the educational part of it was not necessary for us to do that when we could do it in a virtual world setup. Podcasting, I've been doing podcasting for a long time, from 2009, started with one called Counselor Audio Source and ran that for about 100 episodes, currently doing Circular Firing Squad, which is 4, 5, or 6 people, depending on who shows up. Each posing a question to somebody else, to everybody in the group, and we all have to respond to it, and then it goes around the circle. Currently, I'm doing that, and I'm also doing Tech Savvy Professor. Circular Firing Squad is part counseling, part life questions, so it might be of interest to you, but the tech one might be more. I'm also doing some video production for the Association for Specialists in Group Work and also for the Association for Counselor Education and Supervision. And recently, because of all these questions that are coming up in the field, the American Counseling Association did a AI committee, and that we were charged with 2 things, and we just completed those charges. One was to come up with statements for the public who might be considering using AI as a source for mental health and as a source for counseling. What are the concerns that they need to have about it? And the other charge was coming up with statements for counselors and counselors in training on how to use and caution use of using AI in a counseling or therapeutic setting. So we are hoping to get that out because people are mulling around in that field and don't know it. As I mentioned, I'm a member and past president of NEOC, have not worked with in a technical service part for computers. However, like most of you, you wound up being tech support for your relatives on Thanksgiving. That's a job that I have too. But I consider myself a hobbyist. This is where I put a lot of my energy in, not only professionally, but also as a hobby. So chatbots. in our field, the idea that conversation is important and the idea that it can only be generated by a human being, we've known that's not an issue for a long time, that it can be computer generated. So probably the one that you might be familiar with is ELIZA. It was an MIT project back in 1966, and it was a coding program that there were particular stems given to responses, and the computer knew the stems to give. So if I typed in, I'm not feeling too good today, I'm kind of depressed, the computer would then take those phrases and put, tell me more about why you're not feeling good or why you're depressed. And then I'd respond back, well, things aren't going so well at the job. What? And the computer would respond, what kinds of things are not going well at the job? And it would just use that simple taking the syntax out of the sentence and put it into a conversational piece. And suddenly I had somebody that was conversational. There are some other ones that did other contextual pattern matching, but it's worked us up to Siri, Google Now, Google Assistant, Cortana, and Alexa. And I better not say these because I have all these devices in my office, and they'll probably. I don't know who's saying that. Hey Siri, stop. It was Siri. Okay, fine. Well, yeah, AI, isn't it great? So, and then there's ChatGPT, and I've given you some links for the logins on that. The image that you see is an image from Replica. And I presented about 2 years ago now at ACA, American Counseling Association conference on AI, and freaked everybody out in the room because Replica creates a avatar that you can literally place in your room on your screen. So it takes the avatar and puts it into an augmented reality. So I had it in my office here, and looking through my phone, I could have these conversations with it. So this is a conversation that I had with my avatar that I then played for the folks at the conference, and they just kind of freaked out. This is Replica. It costs $16 a month, I think, to have an account with it. I tried it, got enough experience from it, and then canceled the account because I really don't need a avatar friend to chat with. So this came up in our faculty meeting because ChatGPT was being used by some of our doctoral students. And one of the doctoral students went so far as to ask this question to a faculty member. Can a doctoral student use ChatGPT to assist in developing an outline for their dissertation? This really freaked the faculty out. First, because they didn't know about it. Secondly, they didn't know what the boundaries were for using it and how it could be used. And they felt in some ways the student wasn't doing the thinking. So there's a lot of cross chatter, and I didn't know how to respond to it. Nobody asked me my opinion on it. So I said loud enough for everybody to hear in the room, we need to prepare our students to use tools we used from our past in order to prepare them for their future. And the idea here is simply that, and you can see that there are tools from our past, typewriter, or brush and eraser, things that we would never consider using now. But if we had students who are thinking, this is a tool that's being used, and I'm going to need to know how to use it and use it in the future, and I happen to know how to use it now, am I benefiting their education by teaching them in a controlled silo how to do things that they will never use those skills when they go out into the work world to do it. We haven't resolved that issue. In fact, at our university, what I've heard is that there's a committee that's trying to determine how we're going to permit or not permit people to use ChatGPT and other types of AI in their production of creative material. And that committee is spending a lot of time arguing and not coming out with any guidelines. So generally, in the fall, I went to a conference and went to 7 different presentations on ChatGPT and AI in our field. And generally, there's this trend. We're going to prevent the use of it. We're going to restrict people from using it. And our university is setting up systems that they think can restrict using it. Some of them are saying we're doing a first warning. So we'll catch them, and then we'll give them a first warning. Others are ignoring the issues altogether. They're just saying this doesn't exist. We're not going to worry about it. We're just going to not try to do something with it and not try to prevent students from doing it. And then there are others that are leaning into it. People that are in fact trying to say this is a tool. Now, how can we teach them how to correctly use the tool? Part of the problem with that is the difficulty in getting people to know how to use the tool properly. And so how do we teach them what's an ethical way of using it and what's a not ethical way of using it? And I'm more into the leaning into the task and being able to lean into the task. I'm going to take a break and say, at this point, are there any questions?
Yeah, I just put one in chat.
Oh,
Just
I
keep-
can't see. Well, let me see if I can pull. Yeah, okay, got it. And I'm not seeing it in chat.
Okay, well, the curious
Go ahead
thing
and
for
ask.
me
Yeah.
is how do you tell if somebody's using AI, say to do an outline for a dissertation or a chapter in a paper?
Well, there are supposedly AI. And there is, I'll show you on this slide. I think it's the bottom of this slide. There is a AI screener where you can copy and paste the text of what somebody's written and put it into this screener. It'll say, well, there's a 90% chance that this was written by AI. How can you tell? It's really difficult because you can take copy and you can then run it through AI again and get it so far away from what would be looking like AI generated material that those screeners don't work very well. And I know I've tested them on my own stuff. I've gone ahead and generated some things because I was curious, how well do these work and can I use them as a tool for determining it? And do I want to get into that position of having to make that decision on everybody and screen all the material that I get? Or do I need to find other creative ways to do that? So I don't know if that answers your question, but there are supposedly screeners out there, and that market is really big with those first groups of people that I said that are going to try and prevent it. They don't, in my experiences, they don't work very well. And if you run stuff through AI 2 or 3 times through ChatGPT, it changes the nature of it to such a degree that it's not discernible that it's coming from an AI generated engine. One of the tools I'm going to show you tonight, by the way it works as a ChatGPT engineer for you, does take the specifics of what you want and really takes it away from something that is ChatGPT generated.
Because I know when ChatGPT first came out, I was curious. I said, write a 2-page paper on Steve Jobs between this year and this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it generated a paper. 5 minutes later, I asked it the same question, and it generated a totally different answer.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
And you still have to read what it writes.
right,
That's the mistake some
that's a
students
given.
make. Yeah. You still have to read what it writes, and you still have to know what the facts are. So yeah, let me get this, let me get that off the screen.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I have a question here.
Yeah.
The other thing that is concerning is that the way this information is gathered, it's through the internet of all things, basically that the concern there is intellectual properties, copyrights, plagiarism. And
Yeah.
as you said, the tools are in their infancy, but that is something that I think is, I kind of look back in the days when we went from slide rules to calculators. It was this transition period that didn't happen overnight, and there was a
Yeah.
lot of reluctance to saying, hey, we did all this with slide rules. You don't get to use a calculator, even though
Y-
it did arithmetic and square roots. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I appreciate your comments on that, David. You're right. You're right on target. We're still in this infancy piece.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it is a transition, and my challenge to my profession and at this conference was to say, what makes this most uncomfortable for faculty is that faculty will now have to do something different in the classroom. Whereas we used to have, and I think this is a paradigm shift, David, as you bring it, that we have this paradigm of intellectual property, and we have this paradigm of plagiarism and copyright. All that changes. And, trying to protect those old paradigms where information is not proprietary for one person or another is going to freak out a lot of folks, and is going to cause a lot of issues. So yeah, I think I'm excited. I like that kind of chaos. I like that kind of change and paradigm shift. But yeah, people are kind of lining up on sides, and unfortunately, I think the cows are already out of the barn. So here are some things in academics that I've run across. A chat PDF where you can put PDFs in, it will read your PDF for you, and then you can ask specific questions. I used one earlier today as I was checking through this. Lateral IO is another document sort of reader, and it will read through and then take out important, like, do you want a summary of this? Do you want the data that comes out of this? So if it is a like an article on organic chemistry, do you want the data that it will search and pull that information out? When I think of this, I think of, I don't know if you remember Father Guido Sarducci, Saturday Night Live, the 5-minute university. Basically, anything you learn at a university, you're going to walk away and you'll remember 5 years from now, you'll remember about 5 minutes of it. And that's all you're going to get. So why put all the stuff in your brain when in the long run, 5 years from now, your brain's only going to be able to pull 5 minutes out of it. So why not just teach them the 5 minutes instead of, taking them through the whole semester? There's also, what is that? There's also a research assistant, that an AI research assistant, elicit.org, which will also do the kind of data analysis from a submitted article. I submitted one of my articles into it earlier today because I was trying to make sure these links still work. And that's one of the things that I'll say. Everything's coming at us. Everybody's jumping on the AI APIs, which is the code that AIs use to generate whatever they're going to generate. So you're seeing lots of apps, you're seeing lots of websites, you're seeing lots of services. And I think eventually what's going to happen is a few will, more than a few will survive, but there certainly won't be the bubble of services that are now that are AI generated. But another one of those is elicit.org. they'll do, and then you can do presentation, docs, decks, and web pages with the Gamma app. I
a
have a
deck?
colleague, pardon?
What's a deck?
A deck is like a PowerPoint.
Okay.
That there's a couple of apps that do basically like the old hyperdecks that you might know from Mac, where they have segments of things that are on top of each other. They work like PowerPoints. And then here's the AI content detector. Writer.com AI content director. And you can run things through it to determine to what degree something might have been AI generated. This one rings a little bit true for me, and I'll tell you this story. You know, I know I said this summer at MacStock. 18 months ago, 20 months ago, I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. And if it's my first experience with cancer, it certainly is my only experience and my only knowledge of experience of someone who had colorectal cancer. And it changed me in a lot of ways. I'm happy that all the scans have come out good since then, and all the surgery was successful and the nodes were clear. But my son sent me this article that was using AI for colorectal cancer, using the technology. If you think of your physician who might be a specialist in a particular area, and he's looked at lots of scans, and he's still making a judgment onto whether or not this might be a ripe area of cancer or a precancerous area or something like that. What AI can do is AI can take the data of a bunch of scans, even ones he hasn't seen, and also take the data of outcomes from those scans and determine by putting that data over your scan, determine whether or not the doctor missed something. You know, where the doctor might judge this part looks clean to me, AI might say, we've looked at 10,000 scans and this looks like it could be precancerous. So it really has a way to add to medicine in the sense that AI can look at a lot of stuff and gather a lot of data that your physician is making judgments on. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get rid of physicians. It just means that it's a tool that they might be better used to make determination on diagnosis from that standpoint. So in Mac use, there's a lot of probably AI photo is one that you're familiar with, text to image. DALL-E or Midjourney are services that you can use that you can type in text. I want a picture of a horse flying with rainbows behind it, et cetera, and it will generate an image for you. Some of the AI generated images are pretty wacky, but some of them are pretty on target and pretty good. I don't deal with a lot of images in my field, so I don't have reasons to generate them. So I haven't played much with this software, but if you're into AI photo or image generation, this might be a good couple of apps to look at. If you're doing presentations or work presentations and you need 3 people in a room who are sitting around a table, and you can use AI to generate that for the background of your slide or whatever you need. Barely AI, Bear is is an app that can be used. It has all sorts of things with grammar correction, summarization, content writing, and other types of chatbot features. Canary Mail and also Spark Mail, I put those two together on here. Both have new AI engines in them. I'm I'm in a constant search for the perfect mail app that will handle iCloud mail, Microsoft server mail, and my Gmail all in one account, and order them in folders the way I want them. I've got a lot of kinks around my my use of multiple mails and wanting to have it in one client. Part of the problem for me is I haven't found that yet. I'll tell you, I've looked at Spark because everybody's talking about Spark, and the new AI version of Spark, the Smart Spark, I just can't get it in my head. I can't organize it in my head like the simple old Thunderbird or some simple folder kind of system. Even Mac Mail, the way it is in its simplicity, I appreciate it better than all these smart mails. But there are these AI features that can help with writing, composing, doing things with it. But I haven't delved into those because I try to, and it's too messy for me to figure out. Brutus AI is a wrapper for ChatGPT 4. With these services, either they're going to charge you a monthly fee to use the service that will be a pass through for them to be able to have the ChatGPT AI API in their program. Or what I've done is I just pay a monthly fee for ChatGPT 4 and use that. We'll show a little bit about that in a minute. I'm trying to keep track of my time here. But Brutus is a wrapper for that. There are some services that you can get where they'll say, give us generate an API key and put the key in here, and then we'll operate it through your paid subscription to ChatGPT 4. But essentially, these services are not creating their own AIs or their own generated. They're basically contracting out that piece to some other type of service. Rewind AI, I attempted to use it today, and it gave me all sorts of errors. But I'm also running beta versions of Sonoma, and there could be other reasons why it's not functioning just on my machine. But it records and indexes everything on your Mac, and making it searchable, probably better than Mac Search. Synth or uses Synth. I had to get that website in there because if you just type in Synth API, you get a ton of responses. There's another one like this called Read AI is another option. And I bought into that and set it up because I was running some subcommittee professional meetings. And at ACA, American Counseling Association, they use that. And I thought, well, this is cool. Unfortunately, it turned it on for every meeting that I was in. So people were getting requests where I wasn't planning on recording the meeting for. So I still have to work on Read AI and figure that out. Synth uses sort of the same technology and integrates. Unfortunately, Synth, I think, with Synth, they say you can do some stuff with the free account. You can't use their app. The app requires you have to have a paid account in order to use Zoom with Synth, but that's not the case. Well, Read AI is a paid account, so you're able to access Zoom for that purpose. And then Utterly, it removes background noise during meetings, improving the audio quality. Since I'm doing podcasts, I'm also doing a lot of cleaning up the audio and background stuff. And it seems as if what Utterly's doing is just compressing the audio to a point where, they say, well, here's an example of this with a jackhammer in the background. Now let's run it through Utterly. And it really just sounds like they've created a worse audio quality for the speaker and just kind of dampen the effect in the background. So there's some compression going on there, or some filter that's taking out the richness of the speaker's voice and just kind of dumbing down or silencing down the effect of that. So You can take a look at it. You can test it out. You can go to their site and see if it works for you. But it wouldn't be something that, with what I'm doing in terms of audio, that I would find useful. I'll pause at this point and ask any more questions. I see some things in the chat. Notice to customers. Oh, okay, that's something Bob put in. If there are no more, then I'll go into the three things that I was going to really focus on is with knowing how to ask in terms of prompts of what you want. And then once you have a prompt, how do you proliferate that? How do you add stuff into it to make it more give you a better result? And then how to use that in terms of productivity for new learning. So prompts, there are some tips here of things that you can use when you're creating a prompt. Simple things like being clear and specific, asking open-ended questions, setting the tone and the persona. Do you want this as a casual response, or do you want this as a scholarly response? Include relevant keywords. You can add examples in. You can try to avoid bias and check for sensitivity in the issues. There are things that you can do with prompts. My favorite thing is the prompt engineer. And I will show you a demonstration of that in a minute. Here it is, actually. This is, you're actually using ChatGPT not to answer a question, but help you generate the perfect prompt. And what it comes back with is a prompt, and it will come back with a series of questions that it wants clarity on the prompt it just gave you. And I don't know, I think. So I asked, because one of the things we're doing is we're looking at ethical use of ChatGPT for mental health issues. I asked it, can you give me some information on ethics related to this? That was my first prompt after putting in the prompt engine. Then I put that in, and then it came back with this revised prompt. As an AI language model, can you explore the ethical considerations involved in using tools like ChatGPT for addressing mental health issues? Please provide insights on both potential benefits and drawbacks, which is what we were trying to do as a committee. Then it gave me these questions. Are you looking for broad discussion? Do you want the discussion to focus on particular aspects? Are there particular stakeholder perspectives? Do you want it from the patient's point of view, the therapist's point of view, or the AI developer society as a whole? Is there a specific format or structure you'd prefer for your response? A pros and cons list, a brief essay, or a dialogue? What you do when you get that generated is your next dialogue that you put in is you respond to each one of these questions. And you could simply say, broad discussion for the first question, then return it and put in no particular aspects, therapist point of view, and response in a bulleted list. And you just lay those up. I'll show you that in a minute. And you'll get back the next generated revised prompt based on those. And the prompt gets bigger and bigger and bigger to the point you say, okay, act on that prompt. It will keep sending you questions each time to get a revised prompt. So here we go. Oh, that's Father Guido Sarducci. Apparently I jumped into that. So here is, and let me see if I can zoom this in a bit. So here's the prompt engineer. And I type this in, actually, I have it as a macro, so I can just type the macro and it fills it in. And then it says, great, let's start with crafting your prompt. What should your prompt be about? And I say, create a list of monthly topics for the TMUG Apple Computer Enthusiast group. The topics should be current and future reference. You should survey ideas that are of current and future concerns for Apple enthusiasts. So then it generated this prompt. Generate a list of monthly topics for TMUG. It called you the Technology and Mac Users Group, which I corrected them because all I used was TMUG, so it made an assumption there. And it starts asking questions like, are there specific Apple products like MacBooks, iPad? Is the group more interested in hardware advancements or both? And as you can see, what I did was, just for clarity's sake, I wouldn't have to put the numbers in there, but I did anyways. And I responded to those questions. And then I did a separate response that said, please note the full name of the group is the Tucson Mac Users Group. And this is the revised prompt. And I still haven't asked it to generate anything yet. But what it's coming back with is more questions for me. And so I'm responding to the first one as specific theme and focus. I prefer time-sensitive stuff. It can include hands-on that can be done virtually during the presentation. Topics can include community engagement and external resources. Then it revises the prompt again. Then it starts to ask me, do you want certain topics to align with certain events like WWDC in June? I didn't ask them about WW. I didn't put that information in there. It went out there and found that Apple had this thing every year. And I said, please align topics to specific events wherever possible. Do you want the topics to have actionable takeaways? And I said, yes. Gave me a revised. So this took up about 45 minutes, maybe a half hour this afternoon. And I just kept working at it. And each time I got a new prompt and they gave me more questions, I was like, yeah, I could stop right now, or I could just answer these questions again. So I kept answering questions. And I think at this point, this was the final prompt. And then I think ChatGPT had a hallucination. And I'll show you in a minute. And I didn't answer these. I just says, please use the revised prompt. And it gave me this graphic, which makes absolutely no sense. Here's a month by month calendar. And if you look at these pictures, and the words in it makes absolutely no sense. I never asked it for a graphic. Here's a visual representation of the Tucson Mac Users Group featuring themed monthly topics. Please, and then so I said, please create a text description of each month's topics. And it came up with these. And these were just not rich enough for me. So I said, provide me more details on each month's in the description, include particular elements of each topic. And then it gave me these, which is a little bit more. But as I'm reading it, these seem like really broad topics. And, you know, you want to, from an educational standpoint, you want to have it Please include relevant internet resources. So you can ask them to say, here's the links. I'll show you an example of how I did that with Final Cut Pro in a minute. But then it kind of went into a funk where I wanted it for each month. And if you click on this, it will take you to Apple's announcement page. But I really wanted technical resources. Redo this calendar developing a topic list that's practical for the general Apple user and one that it has topics that are easily applied by the user, because these seem like global themes. And so then this is what it came up with. Optimizing your Mac tips and tricks, mastering iOS, getting more from your iPhone, Apple ID. Now, who knows? Maybe the folks down in Naples are doing, the AI stole all these ideas from the Naples mug. But creative uses of iPad and the Apple Pencil, photograph your iPhone. So then I'm like, okay, let me go back and ask them for relevant internet resources. And when I've done this before, it's gone through each one and given me relevant internet resources, but it was only doing it for the first one. And then I said, no, I want more. And this goes on for a while. You did not supply any resources for any of the months after January. Please include internet resources for every month's topic. And it came back with January and February. So it's fighting me. And I guess what I could do is say, give me internet resources for November, preparing the holidays, tech gifts, and it would give me a list of those internet resources. Please include resources for every month. So then it stops somewhere in April. Anyway, what I've done is I've taken the final version of this out. Is this it? Yeah. The final version of this out and put it as a PDF on the website for your group if you ever want to look at it or use it. So let me go back to these and want to go to show. So here's another concept. This I think is great. It's the Pareto principle, and it's a learning concept. It basically says that, say I want to learn a new skill like Final Cut Pro. If you think of everything Final Cut Pro can do, the concept with this learning is most of the stuff that we learn that's a new skill or using a new tool, you're using the tool for 80% of the stuff that you use the tool for comes from only 20% of the learning. So why teach 100% of the learning when someone can become proficient quickly if you're teaching them the 20% they need to know to do 80% of the work? Well, you can apply that to ChatGPT. So I did this. Using the Pareto principle, provide me with a 10-session, each session 2 hours in length, learning plan for Final Cut Pro. This is what it came up with. So I said, well, that's good, but I'd like a little more detail. Provide me more detail about what will be covered in each session. And all I can show you is session 1. This is session 1. This is the detail they gave me. And this is just the introduction to session 1 is the introduction to Final Cut Pro. And it generated stuff for all the other sessions too, but I didn't want to take you through all of that. interface tour, importing media and basic editing techniques. That's session 1. That's 2 hours. So then I said, please provide me with internet resources that I can use for learning skills in each of the sessions. And this is what it came up for session 1. Gives me the Apple's official Final Cut Pro support page, and then Final Cut Pro Beginner's Guide by Premium Beat. Click on that, you get a guide for, and then it also suggested search Final Cut Pro Basics on YouTube. So I can do this, if I want to follow this process, I can do my own self-learning around Final Cut Pro or anything for that matter. And so that's another way to use it, using the Pareto principle. And if you use that language, ChatGPT knows what that learning principle is, and it will give you sort of the meaningful stuff around a vast amount of knowledge, so you can sound competent at cocktail parties. And then here's some cheat sheets that you can use ChatGPT for in terms of general coding, spreadsheets, and all sorts of things. And both of these, of course, will be on the slides for you to have access to. I think I'm going to ask questions.
I got a question, Jerry, Marty.
Yeah.
Or actually a comment in a recent edition of Mac Voices. One of the participants who works for an insurance company said that his insurance company has turned off the ability for any of their people to access a chat GPT or the like, because they are concerned that if they put anything in there that is personal information about their clients, that then automatically becomes part of the learning process for that chat GPT, and that leaves them with loads of liability.
Yeah.
Do you see that as an issue?
Yeah, sure. You don't put in personal information. I mean, you can ask questions of ChatGPT around insurance and amortization and whatever you can put the conditions in that they're trying to find an answer to without putting in identifiable information. That's the point I'd argue with them if I was going to argue, but I'm not going to try and establish boundaries for businesses on what they should use or not use with this technology. I'm kind of sad that they can't think of a way out of that. But yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Marty, I think this is an overarching concern with a lot of this AI stuff is the neural nets that they use to train these systems.
Mhm.
The more data you put into it, and they have access to virtually the world on the internet, the better it tends to get. But it also tends to clog it up with information that's not factual.
Mhm.
And it's interesting as you walk through this stuff, I was thinking through how much of these questions have you added that the neural net was new to, that hey, okay, there's a new piece of information. I'm going to look down this path.
Mhm.
So as everybody uses this thing, I think, things are just going to continue to grow. But you can see where, I guess, misinformation or information that's not really too factual can really cloud up what the responses could be. So it's in its infancy, but it's rapidly advancing to a point where I'm very concerned about the artificial general intelligence aspect of it. I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime. It's getting pretty damn close, but I think the tools are there for that to happen, that we have to really have some good checks and balances in it, including what Bob just brought up here with the insurance company and personal information to the system. So, yeah.
From a mental health
Not a
aspect,
question, but just a thought.
go ahead. Yeah. From a mental health aspect, one of the guidelines we said is don't use it for personal client information for the same reason that Bob said in terms of the insurance company. That's stuff that doesn't need to be put in someone's into someone's database, because you don't know how or when that's going to be used. I'll tell you, in terms of the big question is, can you use it for diagnosis? So one of the mental health diagnosis is what I'm talking about. One of the classes that's typically taught in clinical mental health counseling is a diagnosis and a psychopathology class. I teach a psychopathology class. Generally, somebody else teaches the diagnosis class. But the way it's been used in those classes is for, because we know students are going to go to it and use it. So it's like, let's invite them in the room. Somebody look up what are symptoms that are associated with manic depression. Put that in Chat GPT and see what comes out. Now open up your diagnostic and statistic manual of the American Psychiatric Association and look up manic depressive disorder and see what they got right or what they got wrong or what was missing from their response. So we're acknowledging that it's out there. We're acknowledging that clinicians at least are going to use it. I got news for you. So are clients. But we're letting our students know about the nuances when you use that. The problems are you still have to fact check it. And I'm not one person that says everything that comes out of a paper book or the internet necessarily, just because it comes out of a paper book or even a cited scientific article, is necessarily truth. Because we know, just because it's on paper and it's somebody printed it doesn't necessarily mean it's true either. So we're wrestling with those types of ethical and privacy issues in terms of confidentiality and materials around that. So, but businesses will have to make judgments about how they're going to incorporate it or not incorporate it, or let it permit to be used. I use it for a lot of other tools. Frankly, I've written a gazillion letters of recommendation. I have 3 or 4 or 5 templates I use for that. I can put it into Chat GPT and include, and ask for that to create a letter that includes these elements. Use the template that I give, these elements that are particular, maybe about a student's experience, like they were my teaching assistant or something, and it will generate out a letter for me and I can get that done in 5 minutes with some of these repetitive tasks. I'm working with another association. I'm on their board, and they put me in charge of doing strategic planning. And what I did with that was basically go through and use that prompt engine that I showed you to generate elements of a strategic plan for this organization or for a organization. And it asked me a series of questions. Are you interested in this aspect? What's more important? Blah, blah, blah. And it generated me a bulleted list with some details underneath of the elements that needs to go into a strategic plan for the organization of where it is now. And we're going to work from that. I actually gave it to the board, and they said, these are the 4 or 5 things we want you to develop and focus on when you develop a strategic plan with your team. So there's lots of ways that I've used it in ways to move my productivity along in other ways. Clickbait. Again, I kind of said this at the beginning. I'm getting to the end here, so I don't want to keep you too late. I'm getting to the some of these articles I think are the sky is falling, Chicken Little sort of articles. My favorite one is ChatGPT took their jobs. Now they walk dogs and fix air conditioners. Now, who doesn't want to click on that and read that story of somebody losing their job because of ChatGPT? Well, they want you to read that. They also want eyes on screen for various advertisements that go along with it. So some of these things are just the one on Blade Runner I thought was pretty interesting. Blade Runner's Voight Camp test. How real is ChatGPT? How self-aware is it? And the man, he would still be here. Man dies by suicide after talking with AI chatbot, widow says. If he was talking to an AI chatbot and not his widow, he's got bigger problems that probably were not generated by his use of ChatGPT.
That,
Um,
that- I've got a question on that. You had
yeah,
mentioned earlier about, doing it for diagnostic stuff. One of the things that has always bugged me about the web or sites like WebMD, where people go there and self-diagnose.
mhm.
Because I know people that actually do that.
Yeah,
Is ChatGPT going to be the same situation where people are going to say, "Hey, I feel like crap today because of this, and this," and ChatGPT is going to come back and diagnose them. Then when they see their doctor is going to say one thing that contradicts what ChatGPT says. And
yes,
how is
of
that?
course. I
So
mean, it's the
how is
same.
that going to be in the relationship of things?
Well, that's where the doctor needs to know about ChatGPT. And the doctor needs to sit down with their client and say, okay, this is what ChatGPT says. This is what my experience as a physician has about this and says about this. Either you kind of realize the tools out there and you engage with it and understand, because your clients or patients are going to use it anyways. Like you said, they're Kevin, they're using WebMD already for that purpose. Hell, turn on TV. I am so sick of that Jardiance commercial. That and what gets me even madder is the Ozempic commercials that they keep selling and selling and selling. I can't, my physician or my pharmacy can't keep Ozempic in. I had to switch to another medication and they're still promoting it. So yeah, everybody's rushing. I mean, it's again, it's the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. But it's just another tool that we're going to have to deal with from that kind of diagnostic standpoint.
Well, it's also about
Oh,
accessibility too. So for
right.
as long as a
Yeah.
diagnosis is not accessible or affordable by people, whereas ChatGPT is potentially free or at a much lower cost than $120 an hour, then yeah, you're going to have that. So it's going to be a question
Thanks,
of
Melissa. Yeah,
accessibility.
you're right. And that was another issue we brought up. It's on our standards that we brought up for the American Counseling Association that it is an accessibility issue too. So clickbait, and then let's look at some fun stuff. And this is how I end off. There is an app called PhotoLeap. They now pay much more for it. I think I paid $3.99 and paid PhotoLeap $3.99, and it said, okay, put in 12 profile pictures of you, and we will generate 60 AI generated pictures. And I like to call this the history of me. That's me in a very, very past generation. Um, I guess, I could be on what's that show?
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone. Thank you. Yeah, I don't watch it. That's why I can't remember it.
More
Um,
like Westworld if it's AI.
yeah, yeah. That's me, and it actually kind of looks like me at a much younger age. Um, I don't know if that's from a Salvador Dali picture or what, but it seems that's during my Beatles phase. Um, and then that's me in the future as an astronaut, I guess. So that's the history of me. And it was, it's kind of fun. I got about 60 of them. They're stored in my Photos app. And it was worth the $3. Now I've gone back to that app and it's a whole service, with API and monthly fee and etc. Okay, Europeans' view of the U.S. states and where people come from in states, and these were AI generated, I think, Mid-Journey, and it was when Europeans were asked a series of questions of what people think of from different states. Well, this is what they think California is. and what a typical Californian is like. This is what Florida is like. Tells you a little difference there between the two. Michigan, and that's pretty much Michigan. Missouri, lots of barbecue. Oregon is another one, and Ohio. I had to put Ohio in. There's no coincidence that I just happen to be wearing a red shirt tonight. In Illinois, which is my home state, gotta have food as part of it. And then I thought, just because you're so close to New Mexico, that I would kind of localize it by putting in Europeans' impressions of New Mexico. And then finally Arizona. And I don't know, the caption on it was beer. They like beer. So I would have thought different things about Arizona, but this is Europeans' view of Arizona in a AI generated photo.
That might be,
Arizonans view of
Marty, that might be
Germany.
because so many people in Arizona come from Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, I can't remember what the picture was with Wisconsin, but you can search Europeans pictures of AI generated pictures of put that in a search and you'll get every state. If there's a particular state that you like to slander. Okay, I need some help from the audience. I need somebody who's going to volunteer to read something. Do we have a volunteer?
I'll give it
I
a crack
volunteer,
if you can
Melissa.
hear me.
Okay, Melissa.
Great.
What I want you to do is say it, but I want you to say it like a pirate.
Oh my. No. Oh, heaven, I'm going to get you back. For you scallywags, he must be a hearty crew of Apple lovers. He know navigating the mysteries of personal computing and the vast seas of the internet, with a special eye for Macintosh, Apple's iOS gadgets, the iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, HomePod, and Apple TV. We be gathering under the Jolly Roger Mug, setting sail on third Tuesday each moon via the magic o' the Zoom platform. Mark ye calendars, for we be having 2 back-to-back meetings at 6 bells in the evening, Arizona time. We commence with Ask Me Anything, a time for all queries and quandaries. Following that, at 7 bells, we convene our regular gathering to chart the course ahead. All hands on deck.
So you can do this with ChatGPT. I took off your website the description of your group and I said, please rewrite this as a pirate would say it, and then copied the text in underneath it and pressed return, and this is what came out. You can do it. You can say, talk to me like I'm a toddler. You can put any kind of tone that you want to change things with it. But that's a little bit of fun stuff you can do.
Talk to me like you're a teenager, and every other word would be bruh.
Yeah, or like.
Yeah.
So then I suggested that you could also tell it to write a song about a dog that turns to crime to feed its bone addiction in the style of Bruce Springsteen. And this is what it came up with, where there was a dog down in Jersey Town, just a good old boy with his tail always down. His name was Buster. He had a glint in his eye, but that bone addiction made him tell a lie. And it goes on. I'm not going to try and sing it like Springsteen, but you can imagine it.
We would have to have all that beer that was in the previous picture in order to do that.
Yeah. And well, this is the last thing I got to say. Apple's talking about this project Ajax as the kind of the future focus of AI for Apple. Apple's never talked about creating a particular product. They say Tim Cook has been saying it's going to be incorporated into a lot of our products for that purpose. It'll be integrated into the OS in ways that will be assistive in whatever you're doing. So it's it doesn't stand out. It's just running and helping you in the background. I like to say somewhere serious crying, because if AI takes over and is used better, we will not have all the troubles that we have with Siri. And then finally, I think, and I mentioned this before, I think we've seen a burst of AI apps, and we'll begin to see an attrition as the bubble bursts, and you're going to be running, one app for this, probably Mid-Journey for graphics, and maybe Chat GPT for writing, and all sorts of these other apps that are using the APIs of Chat GPT and other AI software programming. Will probably, I don't see them continuing to grow. They might merge or sell out or something like that. But I think once the bubble bursts and we have a little better, the products can show more security and more, and I think that's maybe a concern of, I'd like to think I can think like Tim Cook, that maybe that's a concern for Tim Cook, that's why Apple's not going full in all AI, because of the security issues or because of the privacy issues, not necessarily security issues. So that's what I've got. And again,
Marty,
Yeah.
what is the date range that ChatGPT covers now?
It depends on whether you're on 3 or whether you're on 4. 3, it's not, it used to be, well, 4 will take you up to about 2 years ago. And I'm not sure where it added like 2 or 3 years on what 3.5 could do. So your information, if you're asking for specific information, might not go back, but if you're on 4, you're probably the soonest you could get it is 1921, 22. That's an issue that academics are concerned about, but the data is so old. There's not a lot happening in our field between 1921 or 2021 and 2023.
What if people start feeding it genealogy information?
What if people start feeding it genealogy information? I didn't hear what genealogy info. I don't know. What are you thinking about that, Melissa?
Just as a means of research. I mean, what if people start somehow integrating genealogy tools and things like 23andMe, and when people are doing all their research and gathering information about their ancestors, I mean, what if they start saying, gee, I wonder if I could look up this? And like you said, you shouldn't put personal information in it, but I mean, the cat's out of the bag. People are gonna add their information in there in the search, the quest for more knowledge about their history.
But the problem with the quest for knowledge about personal information, ChatGPT is going to be able to guess passwords and other information based on the information you put in. So I'd be
Well, it's
careful
already
there.
doing that because people are filling out the answers to those Facebook quizzes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why we keep telling people, don't give it the truthful answer. Your mother's maiden name is aluminum foil now.
Yeah, I kind of think that I've always played with the idea, this is a dystopian way of thinking. What happens if there were no secrets? If people had access to everything? What would that be like? I mean, in my field, in terms of counseling, it would really shift because secrets are really important. They're also very dangerous in my field for people who keep secrets or insist people keep secrets. So when we talk about confidentiality in my field, our job is to try and do the best we can to protect that, but we can never assure it with a client. And we ask clients to protect their own confidentiality, but we can't assure it. They'll go on Facebook and they'll fill out a form, and and suddenly that information is out there. So it seems, again, like an artificial wall that we keep trying to build or protect. And we're getting to the point where that's, and again, to sound dystopian, we're getting to the point where that's not possible anymore. So our society is going to be different.
I think that's what they said when the internet started out, that the world was open now, and then what this chat GPT seems that their source is everything that was ever put on the internet.
including misinformation.
Yes.
That leads me to my other question is, in your line of work, Marty, I mean, you're teaching students, so I assume that they're writing papers. And I know at least even my kids, my teenagers are being told at school not to use Wikipedia, as you know, they frown upon citing Wikipedia as a source. Are you getting students that are using ChatGPT? Are you asking them to cite their sources, and then how in the world do you cite ChatGPT?
Well, that's what the academics are still trying to figure out. Are we going to permit it and say some of this information was obtained through using ChatGPT? Are we going to ask them essentially to cite ChatGPT as a source? And there are actually some guidelines on how to do that out there, in terms of citing ChatGPT as a source. I struggle with asking my counseling students to write papers. And I say that, and that's why I think I upset a lot of people at the conference when I said, you know what this means is you're going to have to change your way of teaching and your ways of evaluating. Because, you know, if you can't tell if a paper is written by a student or written by an AI engine, then assigning them a paper, first of all, I think is stupid, because I have been a counselor for 16 years before I went into academia. And in my 16 years of being a counselor, my boss never asked me to write a paper, asked me to write a business letter, asked me to write responses to case notes and things like that, but never asked me to write a term paper. So when we're gauging our students' performance on whether they've written a good term paper with lots of citations in it and it meets APA 7th edition, it's kind of crazy what, you know, a skill set. What we should be testing is their ability to do counseling and assess that, and assess their ability to do diagnosis and the process that they use for it. So when you say, what do you think of students who use it as a tool? I don't care, frankly, because that's not my sole purpose or the sole way I assess students. To say that knowledge is going to be relative, confidentiality and privacy is going to be relative, is a major fear for a lot of folks. It's going to be a different society. And it already is. We're trying to build thicker walls, and we're trying to add more protections, and we've been able to break through those walls quicker than we can build them. So
It's like taking a math test, and back in my day, you weren't allowed to have a calculator. Now you're allowed to have a calculator because the tests are more complex and they expect you to know more information. And so now having a calculator, or a lot of times tests are open book, because it's not a matter of rote memorization and regurgitation. It's a matter of how you're applying the knowledge, and a calculator is just a tool to get it performing to that, demonstrating that knowledge.
right,
So
but
this
I
could
have
be
this
like
bad
that.
habit. I can still do, and you probably too, Melissa, can still do math in your head.
I cannot.
Right.
I can do plenty of
Okay.
other things in my head, but math is not one of them. I'm
Yeah,
like
well,
math
I can
dyslexic.
figure out a tip without a calculator.
I could do measurements and decimal conversions and things like that, but simple addition, no. But I know how to do it with Siri really quickly, and I can do it a lot faster with my phone than I could whip out a pencil and paper and do it.
Yeah.
It's a tool. You can ask my watch.
Anything else?
Fantastic presentation. This is really
Yes.
my wheels are turning.
Yeah, and I'm
I can't
big
wait to go
about
back through the slides.
when I do a presentation, giving as much resources as I can, and you can find that on the website. And it's you know, there's all sorts of other stuff on my website, but this page is not out there for everybody. It's only for TMUG. And I'm happy to come back and do any other presentations or things that you want. I think part of my own frustration was I became the only guy that did presentations
Mm.
in my group because there were people who said I couldn't possibly do that. And it's like, yes, you can. You just have to spend some time researching it and put it together. And I know there are people in this group that do that. So I'm very happy with that it's a shared experience.
One of the best things that I've gotten out of it, I've used ChatGPT before, where I've asked it a question and I've only gotten back an answer. Never thought of asking ChatGPT to refine my question.
Yeah. Kevin, you're using it like a Google search.
Exactly.
You got to not think of it as a Google search. You got to think of it as an interactive conversation you're having to get the best possible answer or get it closer to what you want.
Could be that some of us are turned off simply because of our experiences, if any people have them, our experiences with chatbot for getting customer service. Like, just give me a human, please.
Well,
I,
Marty, thank you so much
well,
for
I was just
you.
gonna remind everybody that I'm reading a very good book. It's Dark Eon. Joe Allen put it out. It is available in Apple Books, but it goes into a much deeper depth on artificial intelligence besides your chat GPT or net. I
That's the
think
one
if
by
anybody
Steve
really
Bannon.
wants to get into the meat of things, and I have a lot of concern about it. And I think once reading this book, from a technical standpoint, we need to have good checks and balances. Unfortunately, I think the U.S. is trying to do its best to do that, but there are other players in this world that are deeply involved into more than just using a chat GPT. And so Melissa, you touched on it. People got to be concerned about passwords being broken. But it goes farther deeper than that as this technology is advancing so exponentially. So anyhow, the book
Really have to
is
study
in the,
human behavior alongside of it. That's
oh
gonna
yeah,
be
yeah.
key.
It's an area that we're in our infancy, but boy, it's growing fast, and there's got to be some checks and balances and pay close attention because it has some serious consequences if it gets out of control.
Well, Marty, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your research, and your humor. Really appreciate it. And, you know, we may well be calling on you again. And just as a quick commercial for MacStock, this is the kind of stuff that goes out of MacStock both days. And if you can get there, it's a great experience. Marty, I have one last.
I'm hoping this year at MacStock that I'll do something that organizes it into how to use it as productivity tools. I mean, when I did it this last year, and part of what you got was, this is what it is. Here's a couple of ways you can use it. But I want to try and envelope this into productivity, because that's what I'm concerned as in my job. So,
Okay.
Utility.
yeah.
Okay. Two more points. First point is, please see the chat for our meeting feedback form. And please click on that link, fill it out, whether today or tomorrow, and send it in. It really does help us. And Marty, would you ask one of your S ladies to pick a number between 1, and 28.
Hey Siri, pick a number between 1 and 28.
A random number between 1 and 28 is 10.
10.
Okay, unfortunately, that's Kurt. And Kurt, being an officer, is not allowed to win this. So try it again.
1 and 20, how many? What's the total?
1 and 28.
1 and 28.
Do it.
Hey Siri, give me another number between 1 and 28.
A random number between 1 and 28 is 20.
20.
Well, that would be you, Marty.
Oh,
But you're not allowed to win either because you're not a member.
I'm a member.
Or
He's an honorary member.
I am a member, but I don't want to win. So let me do it one more time.
one more time.
Hey Siri, give me another number between 1 and 28.
A random number between 1 and 28 is 5.
5.
5. Oh, that's another officer. That's Ridge. So he can't win. I don't know who made that rule that officers can't win the
Just say number 4.
Hey Siri, give me a number between 1 and 28.
A random number between 1 and 28 is 24.
24.
24 is Arlene Hibben. Arlene, are you still with us?
Alreen.
Is she a
Alreen's still
member?
here?
Yes,
Yes.
I think so.
Alreen is
Arlene?
here. She's waving. She's trying to get to her mute button.
Okay. Okay. And
Congratulations,
you're-
Alreen.
And Arlene, are you a member?
It's Alreen.
ALRENE.
Is she a member, Kurt?
Kurt, are you checking that
She's
for
coming
us?
in. Arlene, you're
I think I'm a member. I've always been a member for about 10, 12 years.
Okay. Then you are our winner of the monthly raffle prize. And I will be, if you're a member, I have your email address in the membership database, and I'll be sending you an Apple gift card tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now and the other one is I need to save the chat.
Oh, you
And
did
I
really
am-
well. You got 3 out of 3.
No. Where is save the chat? I'm not seeing it.
It's up
There's-
at the top now in the upper
It's
right
got a
hand
square
corner.
with an arrow.
Oh, it used to be at the
No,
bottom.
that's the pop out.
No.
It's the 3 little dots, and then you have to click save chat, and then you have to click show finder at the bottom. That's just cruel. They should have kept them together. I saved it. You can't find
Save
it.
chat. Show and finder. Okay.
Got it?
Well, good night, everybody. Please drive safely on
Thank
your
you,
way home.
Marty.
Thank you, Marty. It
Thanks.
was definitely
Another thank
interesting.
you to Marty.
Yeah.
Marty.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank
We
you.
like
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Great meeting.
Okay.
Congratulations,
all.
Alreen.
Thank you.
Not at all.
Hi, Doriana. Good night, Susan.
Good night, all.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night, all.
Good
Good night,
night.
John John.
Night.
Hello.
Let's leave.